Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, please don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you catch more videos like this as I do post them. Also, please do check out the description section below where there's often more information about whatever it is I'm talking about in the video. Also, if I had to change your mind, change your heart, whatever it is, it'll be in there. There's also some links in there as well, so check it out. If you have any questions or comments, please put it in the questions, or should I say the comments section below. I was going to say the questions and comments section, but I guess it is. It's questions and comments. And I hope you're all doing well, and I do appreciate you stopping by. So let's get into this comparison. This is the Denon PMA800NE, and this is the Marantz PM6007. So these two are pretty close and very different, both in some of the features and both the sound quality. So let's turn these on. Let them power up. And these are the remotes. Remotes are both pretty similar. Let me stack these sideways. Maybe that'll do it. So the remotes are both similar. They look the same. They feel the same. They both, when you press a volume button, they both have a little light. You know, they're both nice. The remote is kind of designed as well to control some other, components. So I'm going to kind of start over here on the left, and we're going to just work our way right. So the bass knob on the Denon is at 100 hertz, whereas the bass knob on the Marantz is at 50 hertz. In my opinion, I personally like the 50 hertz much better because most speakers can very easily handle 100 hertz. They don't need a boost at 100 hertz, but most speakers need a boost at 50 hertz. So I think that, 50 hertz is great. Over here on the the Denon, it has an analog mode, and you press this button and that turns off all of the digital inputs on this. So your coaxial and your optical is going to be turned off. And over here, it just has a source direct. It doesn't have a button like that. Now the Marantz does not have a analog mode, so we could pass on that. The Marantz over here has the input select. So you can go from, like right now it's on tuner, you go to network, CD. The problem with this is that it doesn't lock in. So when you turn it, it's kind of like you feel it kind of feels like it's almost like bumping it, but it's not really locking in, whereas on the Denon, it's nice and tight. Let me turn that off so it lights up. Yeah, everything kind of clicks in and locks in, but on the Marantz, it's not, like I'm spinning it, like I don't even know where I am. I'm kind of in between sometimes. So, I don't like the knob at all on the Marantz. But with the Marantz, you could come over here and just hit the remote, the same way you could do it on the Denon to change your inputs. So the next thing is going to be the treble, and the treble knob on the Denon is at 10 kilohertz, whereas the treble knob on the Marantz is at 15 kilohertz. This is also one that's kind of interesting, and I have maybe a little bit more of an issue possibly with the 15 kilohertz than the 10, okay? Because I think the 15 kilohertz is great if your speakers are kind of dull sounding and need a boost in that upper treble. But if you don't adjust the treble, or maybe you need to kind of just calm down your speaker's treble a bit, then the 10 kilohertz is a much better choice, because most speakers, like with the 100 hertz, are pretty much okay at 10 kilohertz as well. After 10 kilohertz, that's when they might start to roll off, or maybe at 15 kilohertz, they might start to roll off, or 16. So if your speakers are kind of dull and you need a boost, then I think that probably the treble on the Marantz is a better choice. But if you want to kind of calm down the treble with a lot of different speakers because they're too bright or too sharp, or sometimes the cymbals with heavy metal rock music that the recording's kind of poor, then the treble knob on this might be good because you could just turn it down just a tinge or so and that should, you know, do the trick at 10 kilohertz without completely like taking that upper treble, which, you know, again, most speakers are going to have more trouble at 15 kilohertz than at 10 kilohertz, and subtracting from there. And to be honest, it just doesn't really sound right, because I tried to subtract a little bit with some of the, you know, recordings that aren't so good, and it just doesn't sound right. Whereas if I come over here to the 10 kilohertz, you know, then it sounds good. It just, you know, calms it down a bit. Okay, so over here you have a balance knob, and there's a balance knob over here for your left and right. Now there's a source direct on this one. Okay, so source direct is going to turn off the tone controls, and over here there's a source direct as well, and the source direct is going to turn off, you know, the tone controls. I don't hear a difference when I turn the source direct on or off with either of these. You know, my only logic is, I guess if you're not using it, it's probably good to turn it off, because it's going to, you know, it's going to save a little bit of power, and, you know, you're not sending power to the tone control. So if you're not using it, why not save some power? Maybe that'll leave a tiny bit more power, you know, to power your speakers, you know, so maybe it'll sound a little bit better that way. But, you know, I don't listen to it when it's on or off and I'm like, oh wow, it sounds better. I don't hear it. And I tried many times. Okay, so over here is the volume knob on the Denon, and typically when the Denon is kind of loud, you know, when it's kind of getting loud, it's kind of like over here. So it goes from here to here, and it's pretty loud over here. When it goes over here, that's really loud. And now from here to here, and I think when you're up in here, I think it's not exactly clean anymore, because it kind of sounds like it's just too loud. So I feel like even though this knob, you know, goes all the way this way, I think that, you know, when they tuned it internally, they probably should have kind of given you a little bit more flexibility to like the halfway marker without it being, you know, unclean, you know, I guess you could say. So, you know, but again, every manufacturer is going to set their volume knob differently. Like over here on the Marantz, when you go from here to here, it's not too loud. And if I didn't mention it, the Marantz is 45 watts into 8 ohms, and it's 60 watts into 4 ohms at 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. The Denon is rated at 50 watts at 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz, but then they give you 85 watts into 4 ohms, but that's at 1 kilohertz rating, so, you know, it is what it is. But the Denon to me definitely seems more powerful. And you know, I mean, I'm sure it's not because of the additional 5 watts. It just sounds like it is when it's playing. So over here you got the speakers. You got A speaker and B speaker on the Marantz. You could turn them on and off. Let me turn off the source direct. So you can turn them on and off. And over here, your A and B are these push buttons. Okay? You can turn it on, turn it off. Now the Marantz has a filter. Like a, what is it, a digital filter? Oh wait, I have to have this set to, yeah, coaxial or optical it goes on. So one of them's gonna, like filter 2 is purple light, a filter 1 is blue. They consider filter 1 the default. I don't hear a difference really between filter 1 and filter 2. I don't hear it. It's nice that it's there. I don't know if one is mildly more, has a bit of more of a spacious sound. I really can't tell. I wish I could. So I apologize to everyone. I just don't hear it. If you own this unit, please let me know what you hear, if you hear any difference, because I definitely don't. So that's pretty much, you know, the front of the Marantz. Of course, here's a headphone jack, and here's a headphone jack. Now, over here, there's a cartridge button, and that's for your phono input. With the Marantz, when it's loud, you're probably going to be more here. So like the Denon, the volume would have to be like here, and the Marantz would have to be like here, right? And this is a little bit of painter's tape that I put on it, because they just put this little like slit in it, and you can't like see it from far away. So the Marantz would have to be like here. So this is pointing this way, and this is pointing this way, for the volume to be about the same. If the Denon goes here, the Marantz has to be here. So now when it's here, I don't think it's really sounding, you know, as clean anymore. Whereas like the Denon, when the Denon gets up in here, now it's not as clean. You know, so this one, you know, I really didn't go too much past here because again, I didn't think it was sounding so clean. You know, every manufacturer sets their volume knobs differently. So that's the front of both of them. Let's take a look at the rear. I'm going to turn these off. Each of these has a auto standby that you have to turn on. Like with the Denon, you hold down the amp power button for, I believe it's like 5 seconds, and then it flashes 3 times telling you it's on. The Marantz, I think it's similar. I thought I wrote it down somewhere. So with the Marantz, you have to hold down the source direct button for 5 seconds. So source direct, you hold it down for 5 seconds, and then it's going to blink 3 times, telling you that the auto standby is on. I think as far as the lettering on these, the Marantz is just a little bit brighter, a little bit clearer. I'm able to read it easier than I am able to read the Denon. With the Denon, I need a little bit better lighting or whatever. My eyes aren't the greatest, but you know, again, you know, the lettering just seems to pop more on the Marantz, so you know, I do appreciate that. So let's talk about the sound quality, because each of these does sound, you know, very different. So the Marantz is definitely much more forward sounding. The cymbals are more forward sounding, the vocals are more forward sounding, and it's also much more, I guess you could say, I'm trying to think of the word, it's more, you know, normal sounding stereo, whereas the imaging is more contained to the speaker. It just sounds more, I guess, more defined per speaker, whereas a Denon is much more spacious, airy, and light sounding. But with that said, the Denon has more heft in the bass, and you could hear it, and I'm talking about with the tone controls off, so I'm not using the tone controls. Whereas the Marantz, it's just lacking in the bass without using the tone controls. I found with the Marantz, I wanted to come over and, you know, turn the bass up to at least a +5 or so to kind of, you know, give it a little bit more heft. If I do that on the Denon, you know, it's at 100 hertz, so I'm kind of boosting it, but it doesn't quite, it doesn't quite have the type of bass that I'm looking for at 100 hertz. I'm looking for something, you know, a little bit deeper. But with both of these just turned off, you know, I like the heft of the Denon better. I found the Marantz to be best sounding with rock recordings from, like, I guess the 1960s and the 1970s or whatever, like that type of classic, not so sharp sounding recordings, you know, older recordings. You know, the Marantz was good with that. I enjoyed them with the Denon as well, but with the Marantz, I really didn't like it with, you know, newer heavy metal emphasis on the treble. It's just too strong for my taste. It makes the cymbals too strong sounding, and you know, I like to hear treble, but I don't want to feel like it's like hitting me in the face, and I like feel like I want to, like, you know, dodge it. So, you know, the Marantz would be better with warmer sounding speakers. That's really the best, you know, match, I think, for it. I wouldn't go anything, you know, more than, say, neutral. I wouldn't go on the bright end with the Marantz, unless, of course, if, you know, your personal hearing less sensitive to higher frequencies, then, you know, the Marantz might actually be a much better choice than the Denon. I find the Denon to be more pulled back on the cymbals, more pulled back on the vocals, and I just think it has an overall better balanced presentation for my particular hearing. I enjoy basically almost everything on the Denon, like even some recordings that are pretty bad, I'm like, you know, they sound pretty good on it. But the Marantz, overall, with the type of music that I listen to, you know, I just don't enjoy it. With that said, the Marantz receiver I have, the the SR7013, which is 125 watts a channel times 2 into 8 ohms, with the Marantz power guarantee, and you could really hear the, you know, the heft of the power that comes from that receiver. When I'm listening to music, like, I love it. I love the warmth sound of that. But that receiver has a very different tonal quality than this does. Like this is much more bright, whereas that receiver's more warm sounding. So, you know, just something to keep in mind, because, you know, I really enjoy listening to music on that Marantz, you know, receiver, and, you know, on this, you know, not so much. The music would be very, you know, has to be old music, you know, very soft recordings, stuff like that. Now, when I hooked each of these up to the definitive towers, the bipolar towers that I have, and I have two different you know, sets of them, the 9060s, the bipolar 9060s, and what is it, the 8006 or whatever it is from the old series. The Denon just produces so much more bass. Like, I was really blown away by it compared to the Marantz. And I'm talking about with the tone controls either turned off or set flat to 0, whatever it is. The Denon is just so much fuller, just, you know, so much stronger. So, you know, I appreciated the sound, but I also like the sound with those speakers better with the Denon, because it just really helps to bring out the mid-range, and it just really controls the treble on them even better. So overall, the tonal balance on those speakers, the Denon. With the Marantz, you know, things can get a bit too, you know, a bit too sharp because of its sound characteristics, which, you know, again, with the Marantz receiver with those same speakers, you know, I'm perfectly happy, you know, I'm loving it. So, you know, for me, based on tonal quality, the Denon. But for your hearing, it might be totally different. Now, I want to point out something with the volume knobs. Now, I like these volume knobs on the Denon much better. They feel better. I like the angle and how it's rounded over here compared to the flat, like, sharp edge that they have on here. It's just not comfortable to touch with your finger. I mean, even with the gloves on, I could really feel the edge, whereas right here, I feel totally comfortable. So there's, you know, this edge I'm talking about on the knob. Now, with the Denon, which one's the Denon? When I hit the down, oh, forgot I turned them off. So with the Denon, when I turn it down, so quick taps like moves it a little. With the Marantz, those same quick taps makes it kind of jump. And if I do anything other than a very fast tap, like, it really drops. Whereas the Denon, overall, and I'm trying to time it, but I mean, you know, it might not look it on camera. But the problem that I have with the Marantz is that I'll come over to it and be like, you know, I'm just going to turn down the volume a little bit, and I'll tap it, and it'll go from too loud to too low. Whereas the Denon, you know, when I do the same thing, it's able to put it, you know, kind of, like exactly at the volume that I want. So just keep that in mind. You know, the volume control isn't, I guess, accurate with the remote with the Marantz as it is with the Denon. So let's take a look at the rear. On the Marantz, you have one coaxial, and you have one here on the Denon. You have two opticals on the Marantz versus 3 on the Denon. You got your phono input here on the Marantz, and your phono input is over here on the Denon. Okay. Over here is your signal. Here's your signal ground on each. So you got a CD, you got a network. All right, they call this one auxiliary. This one they call a tuner. Over here you got your recorder, your input, and then here's your recorder output. Here's your recorder output. Now on the Marantz, you have an output for a sub, which is kind of nice. So just, you know, something to keep in mind. So the binding posts, even though the Denons look plasticky because it has like this clear plastic on the outside, surprisingly when I touch them, they kind of feel about the same. It's almost like, and with the Marantz, I don't know, it kind of feels like it's maybe some type of painted over plastic or whatever. But as far as how they feel, I mean, you know, they're pretty close. I don't really think, you know, either of them are, you know, much better than the other. So, you know, I'm not really concerned about the binding posts in this situation. I think that probably, you know, the main difference between these two is that if you want a subwoofer, you know, pre-output, you know, the Marantz has it. I think that if you need another optical, you know, the Denon is probably the right choice because this has 2, this has 3. But if you want a subwoofer output, then, you know, the Marantz definitely has that subwoofer output. So I do hope that you found this video helpful, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Thanks for stopping by and watching. See you again soon.